My son chose his rich stepdad and called me a loser, so I signed away my rights. Now they beg for help, but my answer left them both silent. I'm Jake, 34, male, been working as an industrial electrician for the past 12 years. Not the glamorous office job type, but the kind where you're crawling through 100-degree attics in August or freezing your butt off on construction sites in January. The work's brutal, the hours are long, but the money's solid if you know what you're doing and don't blow it on nonsense. Started as an apprentice making barely above minimum wage, getting shocked daily by journeymen who thought hazing was part of the training process. Spent 3 years learning the trade the hard way, taking night classes for certifications while working 50-hour weeks. Got my journeyman license at 24, master electrician at 28, worked my way up through skill and persistence, not connections or handouts. Now I pull about 75 grand a year, which sounds great until you factor in the divorce settlement and child support that ate half my paycheck every month for 3 years straight. Every single month watching that money disappear while I tried to figure out how to stretch the rest across rent, utilities, truck payment, insurance, and food. 3 years ago, my ex-wife Lauren and I split up. Not going to sugarcoat it. The divorce was mostly my fault. I worked too much, wasn't present enough, took her for granted. When you're building a career in the trades, the hours are insane. Overtime is expected. Emergency calls come at 2 in the morning. I miss dinners, miss school events, miss the daily stuff that holds marriages together. By the time I realized what I was losing, she'd already moved on. Met some guy named Blake at her yoga studio, one of those trendy places where memberships cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Within 6 months of our separation, they were living together in his house that made our old apartment look like a storage unit. Blake's one of those guys who's never had a real job, but somehow always has money. Calls himself a consultant, whatever that means. As far as I could tell, he made his living giving advice to other people about how to make money, which is basically a pyramid scheme with better branding, drives a leased Range Rover, wears designer suits to brunch, and has a watch collection worth more than my truck. The kind of guy who says things like, I'm building an empire and creating multiple revenue streams. But you can never quite figure out what that empire actually produces, or where those revenue streams actually flow from. Posts motivational content on social media about grinding and hustling, but I never saw him actually work a day in his life. When the divorce finalized, the judge hit me with $3,200 monthly in child support. Yeah, you read that right. $38,400 annually for one kid. Plus, I had to cover half of any medical expenses, half of extracurriculars, and half of school costs that weren't covered by tuition. My lawyer tried to argue that the amount was excessive given my income and the fact that Lauren was living with Blake in his McMansion. But Lauren's attorney painted me as the absent father who cared more about work than family, who'd emotionally abandoned his wife and child for career advancement. The judge looked at Blake's flashy lifestyle, assumed my ex needed the money to maintain their standard of living for our son's benefit, and dropped the hammer. $3,200 every month or I'd face wage garnishment, contempt charges, and possible jail time. Non-negotiable. Every month for 3 years, like clockwork, that money came out of my account on the first. Direct deposit from my paycheck, automated, so I couldn't even pretend it wasn't happening. Meanwhile, my ex and Blake were posting vacation photos from Cabo, Aspen, Hawaii, and Europe. Multiple trips per year, staying at resorts that cost more per night than I paid in monthly rent. My son Russell was getting the latest gaming systems before they even hit stores. Wearing designer clothes that cost more than my entire wardrobe. Living in a house with an actual home theater, heated pool, and 3-car garage. Taking ski lessons, joining private sports clubs, eating at restaurants where the appetizers cost $50. Me, I was living in an 800-square-foot apartment in a complex where the walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor's TV through the bathroom. Eating leftovers for dinner most nights. Meal prepping on Sundays to stretch my food budget across the week. Shopping at discount grocery stores and using coupons like my life depended on it. My truck's a 2011 F-150 with 180,000 miles on it. Nothing special, just a basic work truck with more rust than paint in some spots. My furniture is mostly from garage sales and Craigslist. I own 3 pairs of work boots and rotate between them based on which ones have the least holes. My idea of splurging was getting the medium drink instead of small at fast food places on the rare occasions I ate out, but I never missed a payment. Not once in 3 years. Because that money was for my son. And whatever issues I had with his mother, Russell deserved to be taken care of. He didn't ask for his parents to get divorced, didn't ask for any of this. So I paid every month on time without complaint. The disrespect started small about 18 months ago. Russell began calling me Jake instead of Dad. First time it happened, I figured it was just a phase, some teenage rebellion thing. When I corrected him gently, he'd roll his eyes like I was being ridiculous and making a big deal out of nothing. Then came the stories. Every weekend visit turned into a comparison session. Blake was teaching him about investments and portfolio diversification. Blake was taking him to networking events with important people. Blake was showing him how to dress for success, how to make connections, how to build wealth, all the stuff I apparently couldn't teach him because I worked with my hands instead of pushing papers and spouting business jargon. I tried talking to Lauren about it, but she just said Russell was figuring out his own identity and I shouldn't take it personally. Said boys needed role models who could show them different paths in life. Easy for her to say when she wasn't the one being slowly erased from their kid's life. Replaced by some fake entrepreneur with a leased luxury vehicle. The breaking point came on a Saturday in March. Russell was supposed to spend the weekend with me, our standard custody arrangement. 2 weekends a month, plus every other Wednesday for dinner. When I picked him up from Blake's house, Russell came walking out wearing a custom sports jersey. Not just any jersey, one with Blake's last name across the back. Morrison, like he was part of some dynasty. Nice jersey, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral and not let the hurt show. Blake got it custom made for me. We're going to a game next weekend. His company has box seats and he knows one of the players personally. Of course he did. Blake knew everyone apparently or claimed to, which amounted to the same thing in his world. We went to my apartment and Russell spent the entire evening on his phone just sitting on my second-hand couch, thumbs flying, barely acknowledging I existed. When I suggested we watch a movie like we used to, he said he was busy with group chats. When I asked about school, he gave one-word answers that made actual conversation impossible. When I tried to talk about the camping trip we'd been planning for months, he looked at me like I'd suggested we go to Mars. Blake already took me camping last month, he said flatly, not even looking up from his phone. His version was way better. We stayed at this resort with luxury cabins, a private lake, kayaking, rock climbing walls, not like your tent thing in some random forest. That stung more than anything else. Our camping trips used to be our special thing. Just us, a tent, a cooler full of hot dogs and drinks, a couple of fishing rods, and hours of uninterrupted father-son time. Nothing fancy or expensive, but it was ours. Our tradition, the one thing that was just about us being together. Now, even that had been upgraded, monetized, turned into another comparison I couldn't win. Sunday morning, Russell asked if we could cut the weekend short. Said Blake was taking him to some exclusive event at a country club and he didn't want to miss it. Networking opportunity apparently for a 13-year-old. I drove him back to Blake's house 3 hours early and he barely said goodbye, just grabbed his backpack and disappeared through the front door of that massive house without looking back. I sat in my truck in their circular driveway for 5 minutes staring at that house. 6 bedrooms, professionally landscaped yard, fountain in the front, attached 3-car garage, all paid for by Blake's mysterious consulting business while it helped fund the lifestyle with my support payments. 2 weeks later, I got the text that changed everything. I was at work running wire through a new medical office building when my phone buzzed. Russell's name on the screen. Russell, I want to talk to you about something important. My stomach dropped. Important conversations with teenagers never go well. I took my lunch break early, found a quiet corner, and called him back. Sent a voicemail, tried again. Same result. Finally, I texted back, "What's going on, Russell? I want to change my last name from Patterson to Morrison. Blake says I should be part of their family officially. He said it would mean a lot to him and Mom." I stared at my phone for a solid 5 minutes, reading that message over and over. My hands were shaking. Tried calling him again. Voicemail. Called Lauren. Same thing. Waited 10 minutes. Nothing. Finally, Russell texted again. And this is the one that really cut deep. Blake says, "You are a loser who can't even afford a real house." He says, "I deserve a father who's successful, who can give me opportunities, who can teach me how to actually make something of myself. I want his name, not yours. I want to be Russell Morrison." Every word hit like a physical blow. 3 years of support payments. 3 years of working myself to exhaustion. 3 years of eating cheap food and living in a cheap apartment so Russell could have everything he needed. 3 years of showing up for every visitation, every school event I was allowed to attend, every phone call, and this was what I got. Called a loser, told I wasn't good enough, rejected by my own son. I typed and deleted about 10 different responses. Angry ones telling him off, hurt ones trying to explain how much this wounded me. Desperate ones begging him to reconsider. Finally, after 20 minutes of staring at my phone, I just wrote, "If that's what you want." That night, I didn't sleep. Just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of Russell's childhood, teaching him to ride a bike, reading bedtime stories, coaching his little league team before the divorce. All of it felt like it belonged to someone else now, some other version of me that didn't exist anymore. The next morning, I called my attorney. His name's Paul, and he's been practicing family law for 25 years. Seen every kind of custody nightmare imaginable. Heard every horror story. Nothing surprises him anymore. They want me to sign off on Russell taking Blake's last name, I explained, my voice rough from lack of sleep. That's a name change petition. You can contest it if you want, but if Russell's expressing a clear preference and he's over 12, judges usually grant it. Kids that age get some say in these matters. It's not fun to go through, but it happens more often than you'd think. What if I don't contest it? What if I just sign? Paul was quiet for a moment. Then, you sign the consent form and it goes through without a hearing. Takes about 2 weeks. But Jake, you should know that a name change is often the first step towards step-parent adoption. I've seen this pattern before. My stomach dropped again. What does that mean exactly? It means if Blake wants to formally adopt Russell and you consent to it, your parental rights would be terminated, completely severed. You'd no longer be Russell's legal father in any capacity. No custody, no visitation, no legal relationship whatsoever. And the child support terminates immediately upon finalization of the adoption. All financial obligations transfer to the adoptive parent. It's standard law in our state. The adoptive parent assumes full responsibility, including any future support, medical expenses, education costs, insurance, everything. I sat with that information for a long time after we hung up. Free and clear. $38,400 a year back in my pocket. No more automated withdrawals. No more living on scraps while Russell lived like a trust fund kid. No more watching Blake post photos of vacations I'd essentially paid for. But also no more son. No more weekend visits. No more phone calls. No more being dad. Just done. They wanted to erase me from Russell's life. Replace me with someone better. Fine. But they were going to get exactly what they asked for. Nothing more, nothing less. And they were going to learn that being a parent comes with a price tag. 3 days later, Lauren called. I let it ring 4 times before answering, mentally preparing myself for whatever nonsense was coming. Her voice had that fake sweetness she always used when she wanted something. The same tone she'd used when asking me to help with her student loans during our marriage or to co-sign for her car or any of the other financial favors I'd been too stupid to refuse. Jake. Hi. Russell told me about your conversation, about the name change. She paused, waiting for me to respond. I didn't. Blake and I have been talking, and we think it would be best for everyone if we moved forward with a full adoption instead of just a name change. Russell really sees Blake as his father now, and we want to make it official, legal. It would give him stability and a real sense of family. Stability, I repeated. That's what you're calling it? Yes. And honestly, Jake, you're not really present in his life anymore anyway. You work constantly. You can't afford to give him the experiences we can provide. And he's made it clear where his loyalties are. This way, he has a real family unit. A stable home with 2 parents who are actually there for him. Real family unit. Like I was some kind of imposter who'd been playing dress up for 13 years. Like all those nights I'd rocked Russell to sleep as a baby. All those school projects we'd worked on together. All those camping trips and fishing expeditions meant nothing. I'll think about it, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. We'd need your signature by the end of the week. Blake's attorney is drawing up the paperwork right now. We can make this very easy for you. Very clean. No court appearances, no drama, just a simple signature and everyone moves forward. I'll think about it. Jake, don't be difficult about this. Russell wants this. Blake wants this. It's what's best for everyone. Give me until Friday. I need to talk to my attorney. She sighed like I was being unreasonable. Fine, Friday, but don't drag this out. Russell's waiting to make it official. I hung up and immediately called Paul back. They want a full adoption. Blake wants to be Russell's legal father. Lauren just called trying to pressure me into signing by Friday. And how do you feel about that? I want you to draw up the consent paperwork. Make sure it's ironclad. Make sure it explicitly states that upon finalization of adoption, all my parental rights and obligations terminate. All of them. Every single one. I want it so clear that a first-year law student could understand it. Paul was quiet for a long moment. Jake, I have to ask this because it's my job. Are you absolutely sure about this? This isn't a cooling off period kind of situation. This is permanent. Once it's done, you can't undo it. Russell won't be your son anymore. Not legally. Not in any way that matters to a court. I'm sure they want Blake to be his dad. They got it. I'm done being the backup wallet while someone else plays father. All right, I'll draft everything. But understand what you're doing here. You're not just giving up custody. You're terminating your entire parental relationship. If Russell changes his mind next year or in 5 years or 10 years, you can't reverse this. Blake will be his legal father forever. Then Blake better be ready to act like it. The paperwork took 4 days. Paul made sure every single word was precise, every clause crystal clear, every possible loophole closed. The adoption consent form explicitly stated that I was voluntarily and permanently terminating my parental rights, that I understood all financial obligations would immediately cease upon adoption finalization, and that Blake Morrison would assume full legal and financial responsibility for Russell Patterson, soon to be Russell Morrison. Paul included detailed schedules showing exactly what Blake was inheriting: the $38,400 in annual support, the $21,000 per semester in private school tuition I'd been splitting with Lauren, medical insurance, and out-of-pocket costs, sports fees, summer camps, technology and clothing allowances, everything itemized, everything documented, everything adding up to roughly $80,000 per year in total obligations. I want them to know exactly what they're signing up for, I told Paul. No surprises later. They won't read it, he predicted. They'll see your signature line and assume you're just being cooperative. Their attorney will probably skim it and think it's standard paperwork. Nobody expects someone to willingly give up their kid, then they're about to learn something. Lauren's attorney reviewed everything, probably too quickly. They were so eager to get my signature that they didn't bother reading the fine print. Or maybe they did read it and just assumed I'd keep paying anyway out of guilt. That I'd be too desperate to maintain some connection to my son to actually walk away completely. They were wrong. I signed the papers on a Tuesday afternoon in Paul's office. My hand was steady. No shaking, no hesitation, no last-minute doubts. Paul witnessed the signature, notarized the documents, and filed everything with the court the same day. We paid the expedited processing fee to rush it through. The judge signed off on Friday without even requiring a hearing since everyone had consented. By Monday morning, it was official. Blake Morrison was Russell's legal father. I was nobody, just a guy who used to have a son. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I logged into my bank account and looked at my checking balance without that familiar dread. Then, I opened a spreadsheet and calculated how much money I'd have each month without that support payment. $3,200 back in my pocket. Money that was mine to keep, to save, to invest, to use for literally anything other than funding Blake's lifestyle while he played dad with my kid. I opened a new savings account that night, set up an automatic transfer of $1,600 every month, half of what I'd been paying in support, going straight to savings, building an emergency fund, building a future, building something that was actually mine. The other $1,600, I made a payment on my truck, big enough that I could pay it off in 18 months instead of 4 years, completely debt-free, except for monthly rent. Then I sat back and waited for the consequences to hit them. The call came 6 days later, Wednesday afternoon. I was on a job site running conduit through a commercial building when my phone started buzzing. Lauren, then Blake, then Lauren again, then a number I didn't recognize, then Lauren twice more. I let them all go to voicemail. Kept working. Finished running my wire. Took my time cleaning up and organizing my tools. Didn't check my phone until I was in my truck heading home. That evening, I listened to the messages. They were beautiful. Lauren's first message was confused. Jake, I got a really strange call from Russell's school about the tuition account. Something about the financial contact being changed. Can you call me back? I think there's been some kind of mix-up. Blake's message was annoyed. We need to talk about the support payments. The automatic deposit didn't come through this month. I don't know what bank error happened, but get this fixed immediately. Lauren's second message was panicked. The school says you removed yourself as the financial contact and that Blake is now responsible for the full tuition payment. That can't be right. The adoption was just about the name and making things official. Call me immediately. This needs to be sorted out. Lauren's third message was nearly hysterical. Jake, answer your phone. The school is demanding $21,000 by next week or Russell gets suspended. What did you do? What did you sign? Call me back right now. Blake's second message was angry. Look, man, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't funny. Those support payments need to continue. I'm not paying your kids' expenses just because some paperwork got filed. The unknown number was from the headmaster at Russell's private academy. The message was professional, polite, and absolutely devastating. I saved it. Listened to it 3 times, actually. Mr. Patterson, this is Headmaster Williams from North Point Academy. I'm calling regarding Russell's enrollment for the upcoming semester. Our financial office reached out to update the tuition account following the recent adoption proceedings. When we contacted Mr. and Mrs. Morrison about the semester payment of $21,000, there seemed to be significant confusion regarding financial responsibility. Mrs. Morrison insisted you remained financially responsible despite the legal changes. Mr. Morrison became quite agitated and suggested we work out a payment plan. Our legal counsel has reviewed the adoption documents filed with the court. As Mr. Morrison is now Russell's legal parent, all financial obligations, including tuition, have transferred to him. This is standard procedure following any adoption. Payment is due by the 15th of next month, or we will unfortunately be forced to suspend Russell's enrollment per our financial policy. I wanted to inform you as a courtesy since you've been a faithful supporter of the Academy for many years. You've always paid on time and we appreciate that. Best regards. I saved that message. Listened to it 3 times actually. $21,000 per semester. $42,000 annually on top of the $38,400 in support payments Blake had just inherited. $80,400 per year in total obligations. For a guy who'd called me a loser who couldn't afford a real house. For a guy who'd convinced my son I was worthless. For a guy who'd spent months showing off his wealth and success while I paid for it all through child support. My phone rang again. Lauren. This time I answered. What did you do? Her voice was shaking. Actually trembling. I'd never heard her sound like that before. Not even during our worst fights before the divorce. I gave you exactly what you wanted. What Russell wanted. What Blake wanted. The school says we owe $42,000 for the year. They say it's Blake's responsibility now. All of it. Not split. All of it. That's correct. That's not possible. The adoption was just supposed to make things official. You're supposed to keep paying for Russell's education. That was never supposed to change. I was supposed to pay for my son's education. Russell's not my son anymore. He's Blake's son legally, officially, permanently. Blake's responsible for everything now. Education, medical, insurance, support, all of it. Silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Could almost hear the gears turning as she tried to figure out what had gone wrong. You can't do this, she finally said. I already did. Judge signed off last Monday. It's done. Finalized. Permanent. We can't afford this. Do you have any idea what $42,000 is plus all the other expenses? Blake's business isn't doing that well right now. Yeah, it's about what I was paying annually in child support alone. Not counting my half of tuition, my half of medical, sports fees, summer camps, and everything else. I know exactly what it costs. Now Blake knows, too. Welcome to parenthood. You did this on purpose. She was screaming now. Actually screaming. You tricked us. You deliberately hid this from us. I didn't trick anyone. You wanted Blake to be Russell's father. You got your wish. Congratulations on your new family. I hope it's everything you dreamed of. You're destroying Russell's life out of spite. No, I'm living my own life. Russell chose Blake. You chose Blake. Blake said he wanted to be Russell's real dad. So be it. He's a real dad now. Complete with real financial obligations. This isn't over. We're going to fight this. Our lawyer says, your lawyer screwed up by not reading the paperwork. That's on them. Good luck with that. I hung up. The next week was pure chaos. Lauren called 17 times. Blake called 9. Russell called twice. And those messages were the hardest to ignore. His voice sounded small, confused, scared, but I didn't call back. Changed my number on day 8. Sent one final text from my old number before disconnecting it. All future communication regarding Russell should go through Blake Morrison, his legal father. I am not involved. Then I blocked everyone and moved forward with my life. My attorney called on day 10, barely able to contain his amusement. They're filing to reverse the adoption, Paul said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Claiming you deliberately withheld information about the financial implications that you tricked them into signing. Did I withhold anything? Not a thing. Their attorney reviewed all the paperwork before they signed. The financial obligations are spelled out in black and white. They're claiming ignorance of basic family law, which isn't going to fly. So, they're basically admitting their attorney was incompetent. Essentially, they're saying they didn't understand that adoption meant actual adoption with actual parental responsibilities. That they thought it was just a formality. Can they win? Paul laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Not a chance. The law is crystal clear on this. When a step-parent adopts, all parental rights and obligations transfer to them. Every family law attorney in the state knows this. It's literally day one stuff in family law. Their attorney screwed up by not explaining it properly, but that's not your problem. That's a malpractice issue between them and their lawyer. Will they have to pay court costs for this? Oh, yes. And when they lose, which they will, you can countersue for harassment and attorney fees. Could run them another $15,000 to $20,000 on top of everything else. Tell them to bring it. I want to see this through. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. During that time, my life got significantly better while theirs apparently imploded. I used my first child support free paycheck to finally buy a real couch. Not from Craigslist or a garage sale from an actual furniture store. Sat on about 15 different models before choosing one. Paid cash. The salesperson looked at me like I was crazy for paying cash for furniture, but I didn't care. It was mine. Bought with my money, no payments. The second paycheck, I opened investment accounts. Put $1,000 into index funds, another $1,000 into a Roth IRA. Started reading about retirement planning and compound interest, things I'd never had time or money to think about before. The third paycheck, I took myself to a decent restaurant for the first time in 3 years. Ordered the steak, didn't even look at the prices, got an appetizer and dessert, tipped 30%. Walked out of there feeling like an actual human being instead of a walking wallet. Meanwhile, according to my cousin, who still had connections to Lauren's family, things were falling apart spectacularly over there. The school had suspended Russell's enrollment when they couldn't make the first tuition payment. No tuition, no classes. They'd scrambled to enroll him in public school, the same district school they'd spent years looking down on. The same one Russell had mocked as being for poor kids who couldn't afford better. Blake's Range Rover got repossessed in the country club parking lot. Apparently, it was leased and they'd fallen 3 months behind on payments once they realized they needed that money for Russell's expenses. Someone caught it on video. Actually filmed the tow truck hauling away Blake's precious status symbol while he stood there yelling. Lauren's designer purses started appearing on resale websites. The Gucci, the Prada, the Louis Vuitton bags I'd essentially funded through child support. All being sold for pennies on the dollar. Their social media went almost completely quiet. No more vacation photos. No more restaurant check-ins. No more humble brags about their luxury lifestyle. The facade was crumbling and everyone could see it. The court hearing was almost anticlimactic compared to all the drama leading up to it. Their new attorney was clearly bargain bin quality compared to the fancy one they'd used for the adoption. Young guy looked fresh out of law school, kept shuffling papers and checking his notes. He argued that I had failed to disclose the financial ramifications of the adoption, that any reasonable person would have explained these things explicitly, that I'd taken advantage of their trust and good faith. The judge, a woman in her 50s with zero patience for nonsense, cut him off mid-sentence. Counselor, are you seriously arguing that your clients didn't understand that adopting a child comes with financial responsibility? Your Honor, Mr. Patterson should have explicitly explained. Mr. Patterson isn't an attorney. He's not required to provide legal advice. That's what your firm was paid to do. The financial obligations are clearly stated in the adoption decree that your firm reviewed and approved. This is Family Law 101. What exactly did your clients think adoption meant? The attorney shuffled his papers again. Clearly uncomfortable. They believed Mr. Patterson would continue supporting the child out of moral obligation, Your Honor. That the adoption was more of a symbolic gesture to solidify the family unit. Moral obligation. The judge looked incredulous. She flipped through the case file. Let me see if I understand this correctly. According to the record, your client spent months telling Mr. Patterson he wasn't needed, that their household provided a better family environment, that the child preferred his stepfather. The child legally rejected Mr. Patterson's name and identity. Mr. Patterson was called, and I quote from text messages and evidence, a loser who can't afford a real house. And now your clients expect him to continue paying for everything while having zero parental rights or relationship with the child. The child's welfare should be the primary concern. The child's welfare is now Mr. Morrison's responsibility. That's what adoption means, counselor. You don't get to pick and choose which parts of parenthood you want. You can't legally adopt a child to erase one parent and then expect that parent to keep funding everything. That's not how this works. She flipped through more papers, shaking her head. Mr. Morrison is employed, correct? Yes, Your Honor, but his business obligations are not this court's concern. He assumed parental responsibility voluntarily. He had legal counsel. The paperwork was clear. Motion denied. Mr. Morrison is the legal parent and bears all associated obligations. Court costs will be paid by the plaintiffs. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. Final. I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in years. Didn't gloat. Didn't celebrate. Just walked out. Lauren and Blake sat in the gallery, both looking like they'd been hit by a truck. Their faces were pale, drawn. Blake wouldn't even look in my direction. Lauren was crying quietly, dabbing at her eyes with tissues. Russell wasn't there. Probably in his new public school, learning what life looked like without someone else's money covering everything. 2 months later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Almost sent it to voicemail out of habit, but something made me answer. Mr. Patterson, this is Vice Principal Ricks from Roosevelt Middle School. I'm calling about Russell Morrison. My chest tightened despite everything. Old instincts die hard. What about him? He's been involved in a physical altercation with another student. We need a guardian to pick him up immediately. School policy for fighting. We've tried reaching his parents multiple times with no answer. You're still listed as an emergency contact in our system. I'm not his legal parent anymore. That changed 2 months ago. You'll need to keep trying his mother and Blake Morrison. Sir, we've tried 6 times. Phones are going straight to voicemail. We need someone here within the next hour or we'll have to contact social services for temporary placement. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes after that call, staring at my phone. This wasn't my problem anymore. I'd signed away my rights. Russell had rejected me, replaced me, told me I was worthless. I didn't owe him anything, but he was also 13 years old. A kid. My kid. Once upon a time, against every bit of logic and self-preservation I had. I drove to the school. Russell was sitting in the main office when I walked in. Black eyes swelling purple, knuckles scraped raw and bloody. His shirt was torn at the collar. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, saw me, and his whole face collapsed. You came, he whispered, tears starting immediately. I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak. The vice principal explained the situation. Another student had been bullying Russell about his name change, saying his real dad didn't want him anymore, that he'd been given away like trash. Today, it had escalated. The kid pushed Russell. Russell pushed back, then fists started flying. Both boys were suspended for 3 days per zero tolerance policy. I'll take him, I said. We walked to my truck in complete silence. Russell got in without a word, staring straight ahead. I drove with no particular destination in mind, just driving. Finally, he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Why did you come? Because you needed someone. I thought you hated me now. After what I said, after everything, I don't hate you. I'm just done being treated like I'm disposable. We ended up at a diner, the same one we used to go to when he was little. Back when he'd order chocolate chip pancakes and tell me about dinosaurs for hours. I ordered coffee. He ordered water. Neither of us touched the menus. Everything's falling apart, he said quietly, staring at his water glass. Blake and Mom fight constantly about money now. Every single night, he screams at her that I'm not his problem, that she trapped him. He says I ruined his life, that he never actually wanted a kid. He just wanted Mom. They're probably getting divorced. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. Are you sorry? I mean, or are you happy that Blake's life got destroyed, too? Honest question deserved an honest answer. I'm not happy anyone's suffering. But I'm not crying about Blake facing consequences for his choices, either. He wanted to be your dad. Now he's learning what that actually means. I made those choices, too. The name change, the adoption, calling you a loser, that was all me. Nobody forced me. You're 13. Kids make mistakes, but you're not my dad anymore. Legally, I mean, can that ever be fixed? I looked at this kid across the table. Still had my features around the eyes. Still had that nervous habit of picking at his thumbnail when stressed. Still looked at me like I might have answers to impossible questions. No. Once an adoption is finalized, it's permanent. Blake is your legal father. Whether either of you likes it or not, that's not changing. Russell's face crumpled. So, I'm stuck with someone who hates me for now, but you're learning something valuable. Actions have consequences. The people who really love you don't come with conditions. And you can't buy real relationships with fancy houses and expensive trips. He nodded slowly, tears rolling down his face now. Can I still call you Dad? Not legally, just between us. The question hit me harder than expected. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, I finally said, you can call me Dad, and that's where we are now. 8 months later, Russell lives with Lauren in a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. Not the rough part, but definitely not the McMansion he was used to. Blake left 3 months ago, filed for divorce, shirking all the financial obligations he'd inherited. Currently facing contempt charges for non-payment of support. The system's trying to enforce it, but you can't squeeze blood from a stone. And Blake apparently has more debts than assets. Lauren's working retail now at a department store. First real job she's had in a decade. Russell's in public school doing okay, better than okay, actually. His grades improved once the pressure of the private academy disappeared. He joined the robotics club, made actual friends instead of networking contacts. We talk on the phone twice a week. I take him to lunch every other Saturday. Sometimes we go hiking like we used to. Sometimes we just drive around talking about nothing important. It's not custody, not officially. I have no legal rights to him whatsoever. But I show up anyway because being a father isn't about paperwork or last names or who signs the checks. It's about showing up when it matters. Even when you don't have to, even when you've been hurt. Even when every logical part of your brain says to walk away. Russell's learning that lesson now. Learning it the hard way. But learning it. And maybe someday when he's older and has kids of his own, he'll understand what I did and why. Why I walked away when he rejected me and why I came back when he needed me. Not because a judge ordered it. Not because money changed hands. Not because I had to. Just because that's what real fathers do. We show up even when it costs us. Even when it hurts. Even when there's no benefit except knowing we did the right thing. That's what being a dad actually means.